comments of all three of our speakers. And it's going to take it in a slightly different direction. There's another kind of Western universalism that really impresses me, and that's modern Western science. And modern Western science seems to have circumnavigated the globe. As Rajiv knows, who's a physicist, I mean, physics is done the same way in India as it is in America. I'm interested in the study of religion that brings it into coherence with all of the other sciences that are known as modern Western science. And this means that I do not take any metaphysical or religious claims as anything more than cultural postulations for any religious tradition. What I want to know is whether or not that attitude contravenes the objective of mutual respect.
So
briefly,
I can do that. Well, thank you, Don. This is, I think, a very important question. Two parts to the question and two answers. First, what you called Western universalism science presupposes that science as we know it is Western per se. A revised history of mathematics, which is now being developed by a lot of people, including Westerners, shows that substantial inputs to the development of calculus came from the Kerala School of Mathematics. Substantial enhancements to astronomy came from there. The Delhi iron pillar, which is made of steel and didn't rust for 1400 years, and the Ford Motor Company and US Atomic Energy, everybody trying to figure out how to make steel which won't rust for so long. One of the professors in India that did the research found that there is some kind of a nanotechnology which is not physics-based like current nanotechnology, but some kind of a chemical reaction which produces that kind of an effect, which keeps the coating from rusting. So there's a lot of non-Western science that is being discovered. So I wouldn't consider modern science to be solely Western. I think the West did assemble it, compile it, put it together. It had the benefit of going to all the civilizations, all the cultures. I mean, a lot of the botany, a lot of the agricultural products came from the Americas, like potatoes and tomatoes, and all were developed by the Americans, Native Americans. So I would say that the West had the benefit of being the repository of all this knowledge and putting it together. Okay, but the origins have to be respected also. Now, the real important question you raised is, if we apply the standard of scientific empiricism, which says that we can only accept as scientific truth that which we can replicate, that which an independent observer can validate. Then, first of all, then what happens to religious claims? First of all, anything that is history-centric, by definition, is absolutely exclusive, one of a kind, cannot be replicated. Nobody else can have I cannot have the Jesus experience. I cannot. So, therefore, any history-centric claim would have to be out right away. In the first filter, it would be eliminated. The claim of the yogi who says, I can have a certain meditative experience, is being now tested by functional MRIs, by neuroscience. That is, in fact, at the cutting edge of neuroscience. A number of claims of both Hindu and Buddhist yogis are being used as the very cutting edge of neuroscientific breakthroughs in the study of mind and brain and so on and so forth. So when a meditator is able to achieve a state where he is holding a certain stillness, and this stillness correlates with a functional MRI state that the machine can tell you, then you know that if many people can replicate that using the same technique, they can get the same effect. And if your machine can validate that they're all getting that effect when they practice that technique, I would say that qualifies as scientific empiricism, that these people are onto something because they are claiming a certain state of experience which the machine can correlate with a brain chemistry state.
That's right. That's a correlation.
It's a correlation. It doesn't tell you that the subjective experience I'm claiming is valid. It just tells you that the subjective experience I'm describing and she's describing, who did the same technique, since we are getting the same correlate brain chemistry, and since this brain chemistry state is not found in ordinary people who haven't practiced this technique, it gives you a high, it raises the credibility that maybe our subjective experience, which is matching, perhaps is true. Perhaps a third person and a fifth person who practice the same technique might also get the same subjective experience because the physical correlate is the same. So it gives you a methodology which says you can falsify, because you could also falsify. If she had a certain subjective experience and I had a certain subjective experience, but the brain chemistry is different, then you could argue that maybe they don't know what they're talking about. So I'm not saying that because this methodology exists, therefore all the claims of the Dharma tradition must be valid. I'm saying that we have a methodology to test them now. And we should test them, and the neuroscientists are testing them. Some of them will turn out to be valid, some of them may turn out to be not valid, but we have a methodology which is a very scientific methodology.
This has been a fascinating 2 hours for me. It's been about 2.5, 3 years that I've known Rajiv. He's an incredibly generous person. He's an intelligent person, extremely well-read, and has donated at least a 3-volume work on Indian technology, which I've had a great deal of joy looking through over the last few years. And he's quite right in terms of that modern Western scientific framework as being, again, pilfered. Wouldn't be a bad word. In terms of the West actually picking up these pieces from Arabia, from the Far East, from China, and has created a marvelous thing called modern Western science, which is really world science.